Right now, thousands of Americans are booking flights to New Zealand, and most have no idea they're about to pay a hidden tax that didn't exist last year. If you're planning a trip to NZ in 2025 or beyond, don't click away, because what I'm about to show you could save you hundreds or make you rethink the entire journey. Before we dive in, if you love real stories that reveal the uncomfortable truths behind global travel, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because today's story about New Zealand's new tourist fees might completely change how you see this country forever. Let me tell you about Sarah Chun. She's a 34-year-old elementary school teacher from California. For 2 years, she saved every spare dollar, skipping dinners out, canceling subscriptions, working summer school. All for one dream: 3 weeks exploring New Zealand. She budgeted everything perfectly. Flights? Check. Rental car? Check. Accommodation? Check. Then she landed at Auckland International Airport. Standing in line at immigration, exhausted from a 13-hour flight, she watched the family in front of her pull out credit cards, confused expressions spreading across their faces. When Sarah reached the counter, the officer smiled and said, "That'll be $100 for your International Visitor Levy, please." She told me later it felt like being nickeled and dimed at the door of paradise. But here's what makes this controversial. According to Tourism New Zealand's 2025 fiscal report, the country increased tourist fees by 300% between 2019 and 2025. And Americans aren't just paying more than before. We're paying more than almost everyone else on Earth to visit. Let me put this in perspective. The average American now pays $173 in combined entry fees and taxes to visit New Zealand. Meanwhile, Kiwis pay just $21 for an ESTA to visit the United States. That's an 8 times difference. And it gets worse, because what New Zealand is doing with that money. That's where this story gets really interesting. Picture Milford Sound in the summer of 2019. The parking lots are overflowing. Tour buses are backed up for miles. The hiking trails, once pristine, are eroded down to bare rock. Tourists are sleeping in their camper vans in illegal spots, leaving trash in forests that took thousands of years to grow. The numbers tell the story. In 2019, New Zealand welcomed 3.9 million international visitors. The entire country's population? 5 million. Imagine if 320 million tourists descended on America every year. That's the equivalent pressure New Zealand was facing. According to a 2024 study by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, the country's infrastructure was buckling. Sewage systems in tourist towns couldn't handle the volume. National parks were quite literally being loved to death. Now let me introduce you to James Tawara. He's a third-generation Kiwi who runs an adventure tourism business in Queenstown. His grandfather started the company in 1968 with one boat and a dream. James grew up watching his town transform from a quiet mountain village into an international destination. At first, he loved it. More tourists meant more business, more jobs, more prosperity. But then something changed. Housing prices in Queenstown tripled between 2015 and 2023. Local families who'd lived there for generations, were priced out of their own town. Teachers, nurses, police officers couldn't afford to live where they worked. The infrastructure was crumbling. Roads were packed. Emergency services were overwhelmed. When the government proposed hiking tourist fees, James surprised everyone. Despite knowing it might hurt his business short-term, he supported it. He told reporters, "We were loving tourists to death, literally destroying what they came to see. And that brings us to the real reason behind these fees." Wait, what? That $100 International Visitor Levy? It's not disappearing into some government black hole. It's funding conservation, trail restoration, waste management facilities, and park infrastructure. In 2024 alone, New Zealand collected $80 million from tourist fees. That money rebuilt 47 hiking tracks, created 12 new waste management facilities in remote areas, and funded biosecurity measures to protect native species. But here's the controversy nobody's talking about. Americans are funding it more than anyone else. Why? Because we visit more than any other nationality except Australians. We stay longer. We venture into more remote areas. We use more of the infrastructure. According to Statistics New Zealand, American tourists spend an average of $3,200 per visit versus $1,100 for Australians. But we also cause 40% more wear on infrastructure per capita because we're out there hiking the Milford Track, camping in the backcountry, road tripping through remote regions. So let me ask you this. Australia charges visitors a $20 fee. The UK charges nothing. Iceland charges $7. Why is New Zealand singling out long-haul travelers, aka Americans? That's when I found something that changed everything. About 6 months ago, an anonymous tourism official posted something on Reddit's r/New Zealand forum that exploded into controversy. They claimed to have been in the room during government debates about the fee structure. And according to them, officials originally considered charging $200 per visitor. $200. But they backed off, not because it was unfair, but because they feared a backlash that would tank the entire tourism industry. The anonymous poster wrote, "We knew Americans would complain, but we also knew they'd still come." Basically, they're betting you love New Zealand too much to stay away. And you know what? The data suggests they're right. Despite the fee increases, high-spending American tourists are still arriving. In fact, while overall American arrivals dropped 12% in Q1 2025, luxury travel bookings increased 8%. New Zealand is losing budget travelers, but gaining richer ones. So the question becomes, is this fair taxation or exploitation? Let's look at some comparisons. Hawaii has been debating visitor impact fees for years to combat over-tourism. Venice now charges day trippers €5 to enter the historic center. Amsterdam limits cruise ship arrivals. Barcelona is cracking down on vacation rentals. Across the world, beautiful places are realizing something uncomfortable. Tourism, as we know it, isn't sustainable. But then I talked to someone who made me see this completely differently. Dr. Aroha Tamihana is a conservation biologist with New Zealand's Department of Conservation. I reached out to her expecting a defensive bureaucrat. What I got was someone genuinely passionate about saving the country she loves. She told me this. In 2020, during the COVID shutdown, something incredible happened. We had 2 years without tourists, and nature recovered faster than we ever imagined. According to the Department of Conservation's 2025 annual report, that recovery has continued, partially funded by tourist fees. Cowrie dieback disease, which was threatening to wipe out New Zealand's ancient trees, has been reduced by 60%. Little penguin nesting sites along the coast have been restored. 9 endangered bird species have shown population rebounds. Dr. Tamihana said something that stuck with me. That $100 you pay at the airport, it literally saved birds from extinction. And suddenly, the question shifts. Maybe it's not are Americans being price gouged? Maybe it's what's our responsibility when we visit fragile places? But not everyone sees it that way. Let me introduce you to Emily Rodriguez. She's 26, lives in Arizona, and has been dreaming of visiting New Zealand since she watched Lord of the Rings as a kid. Last year, she saved $3,000 for a gap year trip. She was planning to backpack through New Zealand for 6 weeks. Then she discovered the fees. The International Visitor Levy. The conservation charges at national parks. The higher accommodation costs as New Zealand adjusted to post-pandemic tourism. She did the math. That $100 entry fee meant 1 less day of travel. And when you're on a tight budget, 1 day matters. So she didn't go to New Zealand. She went to Thailand instead. And she's not alone. According to tourism data, budget travelers, especially younger Americans, are avoiding New Zealand in favor of cheaper alternatives. Australia, Fiji, Indonesia, places that offer similar experiences without the sticker shock. Youth hostel bookings in New Zealand are down 23% compared to 2019. Camper van rentals are down 18%. The backpacker economy that once sustained small towns is shrinking. On the flip side, luxury lodges are booked solid. High-end tour operators are thriving. New Zealand is getting fewer visitors, but they're spending more per person. So New Zealand is winning, right? Maybe, maybe not. Because here's the unintended ripple. Across TikTok and Instagram, videos about New Zealand being overpriced have collectively reached over 50 million views. Major travel influencers are recommending alternatives. The brand that New Zealand spent decades building, affordable adventure, accessible beauty, is shifting to luxury destination for the wealthy. And there's a human cost nobody talks about. James Tawara, that Queenstown business owner I mentioned, he supported the fee hike. But last month, he had to lay off 3 employees because bookings from budget travelers dried up. I knew this would happen, he told me. I still think it's the right decision, but that doesn't make it easier to look those employees in the eye. And here's the twist most people miss. New Zealand isn't stopping at $100. Sources tell me the government is considering raising the International Visitor Levy to $150 by 2027. At what price does paradise become inaccessible? So what can you actually do about this? First, don't let the fee scare you away completely. Here's how to be smart about it. 1. Pay the International Visitor Levy online in advance instead of at the airport. You'll avoid potential processing delays and have one less thing to worry about when you land. 2. Time your trip strategically. April through May is New Zealand's shoulder season. Fewer crowds, same fees, but dramatically better value. You'll get more for your money simply by avoiding the peak summer rush. 3. Go deeper instead of wider. Skip the tourist traps everyone hits. Support local businesses. Spend more time in fewer places. You'll maximize value and minimize your environmental impact. Consider the South Island over the North. Less crowded, equally stunning, and your dollars go further in smaller communities that genuinely need tourism revenue. But here's the bigger question we need to ask ourselves. Maybe the real issue isn't are we being price gouged, but what's our responsibility as travelers? Statistics show that the average American produces 2.3 kilograms of waste daily while visiting New Zealand, compared to just 0.8 kilograms for locals. We rent cars and drive through pristine landscapes, sometimes leaving tire marks on fragile ecosystems. We hike trails without proper preparation, requiring expensive search and rescue operations. We demand first-world infrastructure in remote wilderness areas. And then we complain about a $100 fee. If that fee feels like too much, maybe we need to ask what we're actually taking from the places we visit. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. We expect pristine nature, zero crowds, Instagram-perfect moments, and rock-bottom prices. But we're the reason prices rise. We're the reason nature degrades. We're the reason locals get priced out of their own towns. According to a 2024 sustainable tourism study from the University of Otago, visitor fees reduce tourism volume by 10 to 15%, but increase environmental sustainability by 40%. In other words, fewer tourists means better experiences for everyone, including the tourists who still come. So what if New Zealand isn't price gouging Americans? What if they're actually ahead of the curve? Think about it. In 10 years, every beautiful place on Earth might charge us to visit. Not because they're greedy, but because we didn't respect them when access was free. The Maldives will sink beneath the ocean. Venice will be underwater. Glacier National Park will have no glaciers. And we'll look back and wonder why we fought so hard against the fees that could have saved them. But there's hope in this story. You can still experience the real New Zealand. You just have to be willing to pay for its future, not just its present. And honestly, when you're standing on a mountaintop overlooking Queenstown, or watching the sunrise over Lake Tekapo, or hiking through a rainforest that's been growing for 10,000 years, that $100 feels like the best investment you've ever made. So here's what I need to know from you. Would you still visit New Zealand knowing you're paying $100 to $150 just to enter? Or do you think this is the future of travel everywhere, and we better get used to it? Drop your honest answer below. And if you've already been to New Zealand, tell me, was it worth it? I read every single comment, and the best ones get featured in my next video. Speaking of which, next week, I'm breaking down why Americans are getting banned from certain European cities. And trust me, the reason is way darker than you think. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Turn on notifications because YouTube's algorithm is brutal right now, and I don't want you to miss these stories. And remember, the world is changing how it sees tourists. The question is, are we willing to change how we see ourselves? See you in the next one.